So we're just going to start again pretty much where we left off. So in my last lesson, I taught you how to create a staircase in two-point perspective. Next, I'm going to teach you about arches. So I just added a little arch up here, and I also extended the staircase down there. So this is starting to get a little metaphysical. You might notice a few things about this. So just to review, I used my fence post method to evenly space everything out. That gave me the depth of each stair. And then I just created lines moving to each of my vanishing points as if these were each boxes stacked on top of each other. And I know, even though I just did this freehand, that basically it was correct because it's lining up. Now down here, I decided, because this is the ground, that I wanted to extend it, so I had to cut like a little hole down here. So this might look a little weird to you. In fact, anytime we approach one of our vanishing points in two-point perspective, the space begins to kind of stretch and feel awkward. Now, sometimes I have deployed that on purpose. Sometimes those spatial distortions can be really interesting. So that's something that was used a lot by the surrealists, or even by an earlier artist like De Chirico. MC Escher definitely used a lot of perspective tricks to create spatial paradoxes. One of the reasons that I think I love perspective so much is because it can be so psychological, but also it's a system that, if you stay within its constraints, can really actually allow you to build whatever you want. So the last thing I want to say is just to reinforce this. I did add just a little bit of shading directionally, hatching primarily, to show this shape in space a little bit more clearly. Okay, so when I added this arch, I just added a single arch just to give me a little segue into my next step. And so much for this. Now, in these later lessons that are just a little bit more advanced, I have to move fairly quickly. So if I lose you, that's fine. But you might want to actually go back and revisit some of our fundamental concepts. Okay, so I've left just a little bit of my horizon line here, but that's good because I'm just gonna get right back in there. Okay, so I've been alternating between 1 and 2 point perspective, so I'm going to return to 1 point perspective, even though in some ways arches can be a little bit easier to see in 2. So I'm actually, even though I'm using 1 point, I'm going to place my point a little more off to the side. Now it gets pretty awkward in 1 point to place your vanishing point all the way on an edge. Certainly you can do that, but it's not typically something that I would recommend. Okay, so my vanishing point. So if I'm going to make arches, I'm going to endeavor to create some straight lines. My arm's starting to get a little tired, so my freehand lines might start to bend just a little bit. Let's correct. All right, that seems fine. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start in an area where you guys are able to see. And run a line, theoretically straight down, but it's a bit leaning, I think. So let's try that again. And again, my very high-tech T-square situation here can let me know if I'm actually straight. There we go. Okay. So let's make this first line nice and dominant. So my next step is going to be to create another segment in our long imaginary wall. And I'm going to do that in the exact same way that I'm going to build a fence. Because as you know, the fence post method is not just for fences, it's for any type of division in space that's receding. Okay, so my next step is going to be to measure in half. Please use your ruler if you are following along at home. Okay, that seems not too bad for my approximate technique. And let's just go and run a line through those points. Okay. Okay, so using my fence post method, I can go from one corner through the center, and then I'm going to intersect with this bottom line. So let's give that a shot. And then I'm just going to repeat that process. Because I'm trying to go really fast, this is just a little bit messy, but it's going to be fine for my purposes here. But again, we want to make sure that our lines are perpendicular to the horizon line and that this center line is actually in the center. So we go top, center, down, up, top, center, down, up. And as we do each one in the fence post method, we always have to refer back to the previous line. Okay, so we got to pick up the pace a little bit here. I'm just going to erase some stuff out. Now my horizon line is going away, but I probably am going to need to bring that back. We're not going to worry about that quite yet. Okay, so my next step is going to be to divide this in half. Now I can see the ghost of each of my diagonal lines, and I can see, so I'm just going to kind of put those back in. Right? Now I have a point here, so what I can do, and a point here, is I can just divide that up, right? Let's see. Okay, so now I have created X's in each of these, in the top half of each of these segments. Why did I do that? Well, I'm going to use that kind of as the keystone of my arch. And then I'm just going to go from that point, and just to make things easy on myself, I'm going to create kind of wide arches, and I'm going to use the center point, because I can still see it, as the point at which that arch goes from curving to going straight. Now, as I do this, one of the things to remember is that because I'm going fast, I am doing a few approximations. Now, this first width here needs to be wider than this one here. I could just divide this up into even itty-bitty segments and use that to help me have more precision. But that would create a lot of lines and it would take me way too long than the time that I have left. Oops, getting my hands in my own way. Okay. So now I have a series of arches. I've got a couple minutes left, so I'm just going to erase a few things out. Now I think I might even leave these little triangles up at the top. I think they're kind of pretty as like almost like an architectural detail. But I need to go through and I need to give these arches a little bit of depth. So the way that I'm going to do that is, since this is 1 point perspective, I'm just going to go straight across, because in 1 point perspective, everything is either parallel to my horizon line or receding back to my singular vanishing point. Now, if I was doing this in 2 point perspective, this would be a little bit of a problem, because anytime I approach a vanishing point in 2 point, it starts to distort. But nonetheless, what I would do instead of having this go straight across would be I would go to a secondary vanishing point. For this though, again, 1 point, we need to go straight across. So let's see how well I do. I'm going to make this a little extra thick. Just to give you a sense of where this is going. And I don't generally use my ruler a lot, but let's give it a go. Okay. And instead of drawing a line, I just basically made little dots. When I'm drawing on my whiteboard to show you things, the less lines I make, the less confusing it gets. But then you have to a little bit use your imagination. Okay, that is not straight. All right. And there we go. So now we have created a beautiful arch. Thanks, guys.